to A Scrap Life, a podcast solely focused on the hustlers, grinders, operators, and business owners who live and breathe the scrap metal industry every day. We are the original recyclers. No suits required, just guts and hard work. Here is your host, Brett Eckhart.
In this podcast, I was able to sit down with John Sacco, the man who talked me into doing my first ever podcast. I figured it was only fitting to get John to sit down on my podcast and flip the script on him and put him on the hot seat. We talked family, scrap, business, and life. It was a good one. Take a listen.
Are we popping these now?
Yes,
or
sir.
wait until we start the podcast?
Well, this is the start of the podcast. It's official. A Scrap Life.
I love
Sitting
it.
here with John Sacco, Sierra, friend, equipment, sales, everything in between. And guess what? We're going to sit here, drink a beer or two, and just talk scrap.
I love
the
it.
Industry.
You know, this is the first time I've been on the other side of a microphone in the podcasting world because I know.
I know.
Got to plug Pile of Scrap real quick. But, Brett, I remember you being so reluctant to come on Pile of Scrap. Now look at you. This is the most awesome office. I'm so jealous.
I appreciate it, man. So, the beer, for two things. The
right.
beer is a company out of California, which is where you're from.
Absolutely.
These guys are out of Vista, California. So they have a brewing facility in Vista, and they moved and built one a few years back in Nampa, Idaho. So I felt, what better of a beer? It's in an
Cheers.
aluminum can.
Beautiful. Perfect.
And one in Nampa, Idaho, and one in California.
Nice.
So
It's cold, too. Well done on the cold beer.
thank you.
I love
Yeti,
cold beer.
The Yeti does the Yeti does the trick.
Right.
So this kind of being one of our first A Scrap Life podcasts. You know, first of all, I want to say thank you. You're kind of the guy that got me in to doing the podcast. I was doing LinkedIn and doing some other social media stuff, promoting our business, and just trying to, you know, portray and show people my love for the scrap industry. I grew up in this industry. I grew up in this business, the trucking business, the pipe business, and I've always just kind of, the scrap's kind of what I do. It's what I love. And you and I connect on LinkedIn.
Yep.
We
sure
started,
did.
We own a bunch of your equipment.
Yes, sir. Thank
And we love that equipment. And you and I started just conversing. And you hit me up and said, hey, you want to be on a pile of scrap? And you could tell, sorry, I was pretty reluctant
You
to do it.
did
I didn't want to do
not want to do it.
I didn't want to do it.
But you also knew, here was the thing about you, Brett. Darren Doan, who you know as well, who Darren has produced a lot of stuff for Sierra for a lot of our content, he just would point out how much of an animal you were on LinkedIn. And you are, and you still are, and you're just incredible with what your information is. So he goes, we got to do Brett Eckhart. I said, okay, I'll call him. I go, Brett's just kind of, he's not sure. He goes, Brett's going to do it. Brett will do it. Just stay on him. And then you kind of called me and you said, okay.
Yeah.
And then after the okay, it's like, here you are, and you've done Recycle Idaho, now Scrap. I'm telling you, this is badass.
Thank you.
This is
Thank you.
so cool. I called Lindsay, who's the head of our marketing at Sierra. I said, I want one of these.
Yeah. I want a podcast room, right? Yeah,
I want
do
a
it.
podcast room. She goes, but you always travel. I go, I don't care. I do solo podcasts.
Yeah.
And I've been doing them at my house with my garden in the background, but I'd like to have one at Sierra because there's sometimes I have a lot of thoughts. Mm-hmm. I like to do it there.
And, if people want to come through, you want to see the 1100 in your yard, and they want to see it operate, and obviously they're in the scrap business, or else they wouldn't be there looking at the 1100. You can just say, hey,
Let's sit down.
Let's sit down. Let's talk. You could use it. You could not use it. It could be a 5-minute podcast. It could be an hour podcast. And maybe they just want to use it to promote their business. Maybe you guys both agree and it's great, and you go out and put it on.
Content.
It's a good.
Let me ask you
It's a good
this.
driver.
How much has it helped your business? Can you measure it, or can you just feel it?
I can feel it. And you know what I love about it is take away even the business side of it. And you brought this up to me, and it's really hit home. One of the last times you were in town, and we were talking on the phone, and we were talking about camaraderie and just your ability to get your guys and your gals on board, and just everybody loving what they're doing and appreciating, taking pictures. Look where I'm at today. Look what I'm doing. Look at the equipment I'm running. look at the stuff we're handling today. And then everybody, they buy into what you've been trying to tell them. Like, hey, the scrap business is a lifestyle. It's the industry we operate in. And it may not be for everybody. But what it is, it's something that you can all do together, have fun, and it's like team sports. Why I love team sports so much, because that's what it is. But that social media aspect helps everybody kind of put their 2 cents in, and it drives the bus for your business from a culture standpoint if you're doing it the right way. And if you really believe, if you truly believe in what you're doing, I think that comes through. If you don't believe, you see posts on LinkedIn where somebody's just doing it to try and they're just we're open for business if you want to come by. Like, right. You know what I mean?
No energy behind it.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, because I'm going to tell a story. When I first started posting, it was January of 2019. By February 5th, everybody in my company wanted to shoot me.
Yeah.
Okay. They just thought it was embarrassing. And 5 days later, we sold a baler because of a post.
Yeah.
How about you when you started? I'm curious.
For me, what's pretty cool is I've been able, because we're in Idaho, and we like to think we run a pretty good operation, but because of where we're at, you may not get the exposure that some of the bigger companies get, or where depending on what we don't have any big shredders or crazy big operations. We're just kind of we're pretty compact. We're spread out, and we just try and do it our way and do it the right way. But I've been able to identify a bunch of opportunities of material to sell people to. I post material for sale a lot, and equipment that we're using and what we're doing. So I've really been able to identify just a bunch of different connections that are like ancillary bolt-on pieces of our business that have really been able to help drive all the stuff around our business. So it's not even just is it making your sales go up a crazy amount? Not as much as, we're sales driven because we're a commodities business, but we're also super relationship driven,
you're a brand now.
Yeah, which is big. So, one of the reasons, when I talked to you the other day and I was like, hey man, I want to get you on. You got me into this, like you're going to have to pay the piper now, right? So I'm like, it's official.
Twist my arm.
Yeah,
I couldn't wait to get here. What are you talking about?
You're going to have to come to Idaho, and we're going to shoot a scrap life. Because the scrap industry it's a way of life. It's super important to me, my family, my friends, everybody that works with us and for us. And I want to find real scrap guys, real scrap gals, like people that the scrap industry has changed their life, or made their life better, or maybe people that didn't even think that they were going to be in the scrap business and somehow just ended up in it, and then it's just like, I'm glad I found this. And
I have 2 friends who aren't in the business, but they're in the business because they love the scrap. Darren Doan. Yeah. Okay, Darren, incredible Doan creative agency. He loves the scrap business. It's in his blood. He doesn't process a pound of scrap.
Yeah.
But he loves it. Jason Schenker, the economist. Okay, Prestige Economics. Mm-hmm. Dude loves the scrap industry. Business. And it's just funny. He's never processed a pound of scrap, but he loves it.
But once he found the people and he found the way in, he's like, oh, this is good. The people are good. I mean, there's something here. Yeah, so why don't you give us a little background on your family,
sure,
and just kind of how the hell you end up in the scrap business, you personally?
Yeah, well, it's kind of interesting in a lot of different ways. First, my dad, after World War II, he had his best friend that he met during World War II, a guy named Morris Rosenberg. He was from Brooklyn, New York. My dad, an immigrant from Italy, was in New York and North Bergen, New Jersey, and they enlisted in 1942. And when they got out, his buddy got out of World War II in early or late 1945, and my dad got out on February 3rd, 1946. Why I remember February 3rd is I was born on February 3rd. So it's kind of a trip.
Yeah.
So they got out, and they went out in California. They got on an Army transport, which you could fly free, and went out to an air base out in Hanford, California. And big produce area with the Central Valley of California, and somehow they got into the bag business, and they moved from Hanford to Bakersfield, which was the big city. It was Fresno, Bakersfield, and Hanford was in between, and so they moved to Bakersfield where the opportunity was, which is closer to L.A.
So bag, like burlap sack.
Burlap bags, used burlap bags, potato bags, onion bags, old bagging we used to get for coffee bean bags, from the Brazilian coffee bag, the cocoa bean bags, from Nestle, and for the people who probably so.
Because you guys are big ag over there in California.
Huge
people
ag.
think about California, think of L.A., San Diego. They forget about how, and you and I were talking about this earlier today, how much ag is over there. So you start going back to the bag business. That was a big.
Well, the ag, and it still is. I mean, in the Central Valley from Bakersfield all the way up to Sacramento, and the San Joaquin Valley is it's the breadbasket. I mean, it's producing so much of the food that is distributed all over the world, from table grapes to carrots to lettuces, your row crops, your tomatoes, which was a row crop, peppers, potatoes, onions, and then they have a lot of tree fruit and table grapes, pistachios, almonds, all your melons. It's amazing amount of produce that comes out of San Joaquin. So back to what happened was when my dad and his partner would go out to the farms and buy up their used burlap bags, as they traded burlap bags, used bags. Mm-hmm. It's a form of recycling, but it wasn't metal.
Yeah.
And they'd go out to the farms and they'd have used radiators and used batteries. And my dad always told us a story is that he bought batteries, truck batteries at the time for $1 a piece. And so he offered this one guy, we buy batteries. And he goes, how much? The farmer goes, well, how much you pay? He goes, $1. He goes, yeah, but this one's no good. And my dad said, okay, 50 cents. He was going to pay him $1.
Yeah.
Because, well, it's not good. I'll give you 50 cents.
Uh-huh.
And so now not only were you buying bags, you were buying radiators. Then you were buying batteries. And then we had all this land at Sierra and Bakersfield, this back acreage, that really was just dirt. And we had some auto parts. But then that got us involved into scrap. And in 1959, we started the scrap business. I wasn't born, but that's, so we celebrated our 60 years in scrap metal and recyclables. We do, because we do paper and some plastics, and of course all the non-ferrous and all the iron grades. So yes.
So what year did he immigrate?
He came to America in 1935 as a 13-year-old boy from southern Italy, a little in the region of Basilicata, which was by Calabria. It's not Sicily; it's just the southern part, and came to America from Montemurro in 1935.
You know what I love about like the immigration stories, I think right now what's going on there's a lot of challenges going on in the society right now, but people forget that there's a lot of people that still want to come to this country. As there's a lot of people out there that are upset that they're here and the way that they perceive that they're getting treated, and some of them are justifiably upset. But there's a lot of people that still want to come here. And they're trying to come here because no matter how bad you think it might be, there's a lot of people in a lot of countries out there that have it even worse. And they don't have the opportunity that people like your dad saw. And he came over here at 13 with his parents.
His father came to America for the first time in 1911, and then he would bounce back from New York to Italy. Mm-hmm. And eventually, 1935 was the height of the Depression. Look, Italy was dead. Okay, there was nothing happening, especially in southern. And today, there's a huge dynamic in Italy. The northern part of Italy is an industrial powerhouse.
Yeah.
Southern Italy, now you have a lot of tourism, but you go to a lot of these villages, there is no industry. Mm-hmm. Okay, there's still, you have like before COVID-19, okay, you had like 20-something% unemployment in the south, 2% unemployment in the north.
Yeah, wow.
And it's the terrain also. Southern Italy is super hilly, very difficult to build a 100,000 square foot factory or a 1 million square foot Amazon warehouse, right? Mm-hmm. Northern Italy, there's that certain zone and it's flat. I mean, there's still mountains, but there's a lot of flat land, and that's where a lot of their factories are. Again, like take Ferrari, for instance. It's a handmade vehicle, but that's all up in northern Italy. A lot of your CNC equipment is made by Lake Como in a town called Varese. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of equipment coming out of Italy. A lot of different industries. Food packaging, CNC equipment for manufacturing, and of course the shears and the portable balers that we sell. Now we manufacture the 2 Rams in Georgia, but we got that coming in. So anyway, so back to my dad's story. So when they started getting scrap, and they got into scrap, we had agri-packaging. We did cotton bagging and ties. California used to bale 2.5 million bales a year, or grow and bale 2.5 million bales a year of cotton. And we supplied them all the burlap bagging and the wire and the bands that would go around those bales. The old fat. Now today it's a polypropylene that covers it, but it used to be burlap.
Yeah.
And so.
This is in the 50s.
This is in the 50s,
okay.
And it grew into the 60s. And in the 70s, I would say early 70s, it was probably the height of the cotton industry as far as that, when we sold into Arizona bagging and ties. But California, the west side, the water got real expensive. Baling cotton or growing cotton became unprofitable, started shrinking. You had this was the first time you had a lot of bagging coming in from Asia.
Okay.
Complete bagging. Okay. And then you were competing. And as an American manufacturer of bagging, we couldn't compete. So we got out of that. We had the scrap metal yard, and we got out of that in 1987.
87.
And then we started the equipment company.
So, which is the whole. I mean, probably Sierra's probably more, in my opinion, probably more well known for the equipment. But the beauty of the way you guys have done it is, you guys understand what the scrap guy fights.
So we do what you do every day, Brett.
And when you that slogan hits home, because you have an 1100 in your yard, you have a material, you have a non-ferrous 2 Ram baler, like you all the equipment that you're promoting and selling, you're also using. So you've been able to work the kinks and do all that. So how does a guy go from the bag business to then the scrap business to where now you're an international equipment sales company?
Okay, so how that's
got to
happened,
be
it's a pretty funny story in a lot of respects for me on a personal level. My dad went to Italy in 1983. Okay, I was in my senior year at USC, University of Southern California. And so I came home one weekend, and he's showing me, I'm going to buy this baler. I went, what? Why are you buying a baler out of Italy?
Yeah.
Well, I timed it with my dad was a big guy about his watch, timing things, time.
Uh-huh.
And says it's twice as fast as this American-made one. I was, okay, whatever. So he buys it. And so he brings it in. And we had this big mountain of appliances and sheet iron. So he starts baling it. Now he has to sell the bales. And his friend Terry Glukoff was the buyer at Judson Steel. No, it was Judson.
Schnitzer.
Yeah, it was Judson Steel.
Oh.
And so he invited him down. He goes, you got to see this new baler. And, of course, everybody thought my dad was out of his mind. What are you doing buying this baler from Italy?
Yeah.
So he gets going, and a couple people buy this baler from him. Okay, now this is 1983, 84, 85. Now in 1986.
Just real quick. So people started buying the baler. They liked the baler that he had.
Yeah.
And so then they came and saw it.
And my dad sold it to him.
So he's like, "Oh yeah,
I can get you. I know how to get that baler right.
I know a guy who can get you one of those."
So the Italian manufacturer, who was in a small town in Italy, thought my dad was out of his mind. You're not going to sell these machines.
Northern Italy or Southern Italy?
He's in Northern Italy.
Okay.
And he told my dad, "Okay, yeah, you can have the distributorship if you sell 2 a year."
Uh-huh.
Well, some years we sell well over 100 units. So it's kind of funny from 2 to where it was. So here's what, but there was this interesting transition. My dad's partner, 42 years, wanted out, the agri-packaging. He didn't really care for the scrap business. Didn't think the equipment business would mount to anything.
Yeah.
And so my dad's selling Sierra Bag Company. And so I'm not really into scrap. I was raised baling burlap bags. I ran the baler, but for burlap bags in the summer, okay? Yeah. And now I'm selling balers. It's just kind of nutty if you really think about it. So there was a big old upstroke baler, and we used to have to get inside it and push. I always thought, well, what if this thing automatically turned on? But anyway, so...
No lockout tag.
Yeah, no. Are you kidding? So in 1986, early 86, my dad's process of buying out his partner, and I really didn't feel like I had a home in the scrap side because I really didn't understand it. So I was filling out. I had an application. I was going to go to Hamburger University. I was going to buy a McDonald's. That was my goal. I had to go to Hamburger University first.
Yeah.
So then my dad comes into my office, and I got the application. I'm filling it out. Had my deposit check. I mean, this is a true story. Comes in, looks over my cubicle, and he goes, "What did you take at USC?" Now, here's a guy who never even finished high school, right? Mm-hmm. He goes, "Marketing?" I go, "Yeah." So he throws the brochures of these balers from Edromac on my desk and says, "Well, then market these balers." I couldn't say anything. I can't say, "Well, Dad, I want to buy a McDonald's." That wasn't going to fly. He just finished paying pretty big money for my education at the time. And she says, "Market these balers." That's how it all started for me.
Wow.
We got out of agri-packaging. Didn't really know much about scrap. Look, I'm the least mechanical dude you'd ever met.
I'm not that far behind you.
Dude, I don't even know where a battery in a car is.
Yeah, I'm not that. I'm not that far behind you.
But marketing was something I knew. It was just
sales, marketing, business, right?
Right. I mean, but not so. That's how it all started.
So with your dad, your dad had a business partner,
right?
Right, and his business partner was kind of like, "Okay, I'm good.
I'm done. I'm done." He was finished.
It was an age thing, or just the business had reached a level that he wasn't.
It was both age. Agri-packaging was diminishing our ability to compete against Asian manufacturers of bags.
Okay.
And he didn't believe in the equipment. He just thought,
okay.
Well, because everybody thought my dad was crazy. Remember, Mr. Masui, who was the president of Hugo New, told my dad, he goes, "Oh, what are you doing selling these machines?" You know, he was his Japanese accent. And my dad, he goes, "Oh, Ben, you're crazy selling this." And the guys from Mosley Machinery my dad says, "Well, why don't you guys sell this? And you guys you're in equipment business." Mosley used to make shears and a 2-ram baler. And I never found the letter, but I remember Ray Newsom, who was the president of Mosley, sent my dad a letter saying, "Ben, I'm sorry. This baler just won't sell in America."
Yeah, of course, yeah. I mean, what would your competitors say?
Well, but they had the rights to it.
They had the rights to do it.
It's like the people. Probably, how about the record label companies that turned down the Beatles?
Yeah.
Okay, they turned them down.
Yeah.
There were several people who turned that band down. I don't think they're going to make it.
Well, it's all in the eye of the beholder. It's like any business or any deal, right? It's like if you have a certain thing and you're like, I could make that work. I mean, like, what's this beer worth? Well, it depends on if somebody really likes that beer or if that's their flavor or not. Right. To the right guy, it's worth $5. To the wrong guy, it's not worth 10 cents.
My dad was a true believer, Brett. He was a believer in the equipment and a believer that a small baler and then the shear baler lager combo was needed by small and medium-sized scrap guys because back then, really, the big equipment manufacturers and only the big yards could afford it. So my dad saw this niche that nobody else saw, and he attacked it, and he believed. And I came up, my first ad, was introducing the Italian ingenuity that says arrivederci to the competition. I sold equipment from that. And so, wait a minute, I guess I can market this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, because my dad was such a believer, and because he knew the business, and I knew some of the business, but, as you got going and, you learn by operating every day as we do still, you just learn so much. That's how it all got there. And it just grew, I just go.
So you guys are a family business.
Business.
And started as a family business, still a family business.
Absolutely.
And that's what a lot of this industry is family businesses. And it's not, there's a lot of, there's a lot of corporate, there's some big publicly traded companies out there. But, if you went nationwide, and even if you start going into other countries, you start to realize it's still small and primarily family-owned, multi-generation family business. And I think a lot of people take a lot of pride in that they are. And I think you guys do that same. You're second generation.
Little Phil, who
Phil's third.
Third
generation.
Yeah, third.
And
so a lot of the old scrap process. The original metal guys in America were predominantly Jewish. Okay, and then with some Italians and some Portuguese, and then a couple randoms. That was how it broke down. And the old, I learned this from traveling back in the early '80s, and when I traveled to a lot of these places where the grandfather and the father were still in the business, but the father, who was second generation, raised their kids to be doctors, lawyers, and other things. Okay, and so a lot of those people, all of a sudden, their kids were successful lawyers, and now they didn't have an exit plan. So that's why you saw a lot of consolidation, because there was all of a sudden nobody to hand the business off to, because they raised their kids to be doctors and lawyers and other things, and they did. But there's still a lot.
Well, even in your situation, you're talking about it. Your dad was a scrap guy, an equipment guy, and you went to school, and you're going to own McDonald's until he kind of said, "Hey,
he didn't. But, if I guess ultimately, if I wanted to, I could have. But look, my dad gave me everything I had.
Yeah,
I owe everything to my mother and father. Okay, my father, he was the man. Okay, he was the dude. He was an amazing man. I owe everything. Everything I ever got is from him.
And I'm in a similar boat.
And so there was a sense of obligation, and I don't regret it.
It's worked out pretty good.
It's worked out real good.
Yeah, it's worked out. And here's the thing: not everybody's blessed. I always say, I was saying this to you earlier, I was blessed with really good DNA. My dad, my mom, they taught me how to go through good times, bad times, how to manage, how to still have a life, but still run a quality operation. And so, not everybody's blessed with great DNA.
No, and then my brother, I failed to mention my brother Philip.
Well,
I want to mention my brother Philip.
I'm going to go into it. That's my next. Don't
go for it.
Because I'm back to the family business.
Okay, let's stay on it.
My thing is in your situation, I was born with a sister who wanted to be a school teacher. So it's me as far as a family business, and what I call basically my work brothers, guys that I've hired, that I've known, because I didn't have any brothers. And my sister wanted to be a school teacher, and she's a great school teacher. My wife's a school teacher. It's in their blood. That's what they know, and they love it, and I have more power to them. So you have an older brother.
Yes. Well, I have two older brothers,
brothers,
one in the business.
One in the business. So give me a little background on Phil, and kind of how you guys have found a way to operate a family business, because that's a tough dynamic. A family and business together, especially with brothers, you guys found a way to do it.
Well, that's how smart my dad was. Because like I said, when I say I owe everything to my dad, it's because when we started the equipment company in '86, we still had the scrap business, right? Mm-hmm. So my dad put my brother in charge of the scrap metal business, put me in charge of the equipment business. Separation of duties.
Yeah.
And the one thing about my brother Philip is the most loyal and honest human. The best business partner you can have. You talk about getting back. So Phil, he ran the scrapyard. I ran the equipment business. And for how many years now? Since '86, what are we? 34 years now doing this. So blessed to have the training and the tutelage of my father until he passed away from cancer in 2009. Now, he was there every day in the office. Okay, my dad died at 87, but he was the youngest 87-year-old you ever met. Dude was just full of it, man. The dude had more. If you traveled with my dad, he'd wear you out.
Yeah.
Oh, he was go, 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 go. And so he was there every day. So the blessings I had from '86 to 2009 to have him every day in the office, and his ability to, teach, advise, and also gave me the reins.
Yeah.
Right? And he gave my brother the reins. And so, blessed. And so because Philip and I had separations of duties, if you will, never had never had an issue.
Does it give you guys the opportunity to kind of feed off each other? So, like, when maybe let's say there's some years when the equipment sales are dynamite, and then there's some years like you get that '06 to '08 run where, I mean, scrap's dynamite, but obviously when scrap's good, that's when equipment's getting bought. So then everybody's kind of
absolutely,
there,
100%. And we have fed off each other. The equipment company grew to be, it's about 3 to 4 times the size of the scrap company. But, there's challenges during bad times, obviously, there. But in the end, it was a supportive thing. He supported me because I had to get out and travel, and he had to stay behind.
Yeah.
I became got involved with ISRI, the Institute of Scrap Recycling Industries, and became chairman. I needed his support without my brother supporting me, because there was a lot of time I had to be out of the office doing ISRI work, right?
Yeah.
But there he was there. So I am blessed to have a partner, and my brother Philip, because we're 50-50 on the scrapyard, 50-50 in the equipment company.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, in that way, if you're winning, he's winning.
And
if he's winning, you're winning.
Absolutely, 100%.
And it gives you that. I mean, that's why if you're ever to do a joint venture, I mean, I go back to like our joint venture days when we were a joint venture partner with Schnitzer, right?
Right.
And which people, when we joint venture partnered with Schnitzer, they were not a publicly traded company. That was when Dr. Leonard was still there, and Terry Glukoff and Jim Goodrich. They put that deal together, which you guys, Terry Glukoff obviously
very well. Yeah.
And they kind of manufactured and put that deal together. And when they did it, it was a 50-50 joint venture. So if you're winning, we're winning. Vice versa. That support was there. When they gave us the opportunity to buy our 50% back in 2016.
At the height of the bottom, I call it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
At the height
of the bottom. And I think a lot of people for that, Kirschman and Henderson, and man, just a lot of people that were able to kind of push that through and help us become 100% family-owned business again. When I go back and I think about, you and your brother and a family-owned and have that 50-50 to where you're cheering each other on, not saying, oh, what's your cut? I'm 75-25, or I'm half in, half out.
Right.
I mean, that's where you get those real wins.
And because we had because you had the completely different, he had to run the scrapyard either. Right? You can't do both. Okay. Yeah. And I think that's where the win-win came. And again, another huge blessing. It was the genius of my father who figured, put you over here and put you over here. This will work out good.
Yeah.
And it did. It's worked out amazing. I mean, my gosh.
And so your dad, when you say he came to the office every day, or up until he turned 87 or whatever that was.
Until he died.
At what point? How old were you when he kind of gave you the reins? Said, I'm going to show up here every day. But at what point was he basically like, I'm going to show up, and if you have a question, give me a call. But unless you call me, I'm just going to let you make the best decision you can make.
Gosh, that's really hard to say when, because my dad always had, we called it a grip. I mean, he always knew what was going on. He let me run day to day from the very start. Okay. And the numbers always proved out whether I was doing my job, right?
Yeah.
The financials always proved what was happening.
The numbers don't lie.
But he was, like I said, he was just so great. My dad had a saying, give somebody enough rope, they'll hang themselves. And so he kept giving me rope. I didn't hang myself. He kept giving me more. And I guess so. It's hard to say. I would think in the last few years of his life was when the last year of his life before he got cancer was, I think, ultimately when he finally did this, let go. And then, of course, when he got diagnosed with cancer, he died 5 months after that. And it's interesting, and why? Because you bring up an interesting question. the relationship when he was dying of cancer, we never talked about it. He knew it. I knew it. Never talked about it. But I'd go visit him every day after work. You know, he was at home at that point. Chemo just knocked the crud out of him, and he had to stop chemo because it was one or the other was going to kill him.
Yeah.
Might as well try to have a quality of life for the remaining time. So I'd go over there, and he'd shoo everybody off, and I'd sit down. He says, okay, have you done this? Done. Have you done this? Done. Don't forget about this. Okay. And this. And we would go through this checklist. We never talked about death. But I think he knew I could do some of these things, and that I was the guy he went to at the end to make sure some of these little things had to get done.
And stuff that didn't have anything to do with work. It was just
Some of it had to do
well,
with...
I mean, some did, but there was other stuff that was just like tidying up all the loose
All these little
ends.
loose ends had to be taken care of. And we talked about that. I'd go and he goes, all right, okay, and I'd go back and report, okay, this is done. Good. And so, yeah, it's...
And the reason I asked that question is because, my dad's retired, and my mom and dad are both retired, and I think about like how blessed I am because you get these small family-owned businesses, and even if it's scrap business or a scrap industry or not, and their parents have a really hard time getting out of the way. So like even though your father was involved, he still got out of your way and let you build the business, and I think about that all the time with my story is my dad was just basically said, hey, here, like go get it done. Like you've made enough good decisions to this point. Like I trust you. You're gonna make some bad decisions, but I think you're gonna make enough good ones. So he gave me basically, I've heard it called like the air cover. He gave me the air cover to run the business, knowing that he was kind of sitting there. Like if I ever had a question, or if I ran into an issue, I could be like, hey, what do you think about X, Y, Z? And I think that's a huge advantage.
I use my dad all the time for that, Brett.
Yeah.
That was the fascinating thing. When I look back at this, and as I'm thinking, as you asked the question, we'd go to my dad, my general sales manager, and I will go, "Oh, Dad, well, what do you think about this? And what do you think about that? And this and this and this." And he was so right all the time. That's what's so crazy.
Yeah. Like
is
looking
how
back
right he was just
about a lot of stuff.
Oh.
Do you think that's experience or
absolutely? Well,
he's seen it before, or he just kind of could see where the train was going, or like what?
He just had a gift. Yeah, experience, of course, life experience. Guy had been in a war.
That creates a ton of opportunity.
He was never scared. My dad was never scared.
Yeah. Because what I think this is. I mean, people that have been in war or people that have been from underprivileged countries, they're not scared to go to zero.
They came from zero.
Exactly. And I think if you're ever at the point where you're afraid to go to zero, you've gone too far, right?
Okay.
So, and I liken it to that. This is if you feel like you're so stretched that if going to zero is gonna break you, then you've gone too far. So I always use my equilibrium as where's my zero? As you get older and you have kids and you have a family, your zero moves up where your obligations, right?
Correct.
But if you've come from a war-torn country, or you've immigrated over here, your zero is significantly lower than a lot of other people. So your ability to go to zero it almost gives you that extra, like, what's the worst that could happen? I'm ready to go, and I'm totally bought in.
That's just so spot on. You couldn't have said it any better. There's nothing to add. You nailed it.
So with your dad, I mean, I think that's
that's where he was. He was never scared,
and he believed. The other side is he believed in himself, his ability to build a business. He believed in the product, and he believed that he had generations. He had kids coming that are ready that he could. He might have to force your hand a little bit, but you're ready to go. Like
absolutely.
You're ready to take over and build something.
You're a coach. Okay.
Yeah.
You coach your kids, and I love coaching. So, and a reason I bring this up is how many times you've told your kids or whoever is on the team, you got to believe, get up there, you're going to hit this ball.
Yeah.
But you got to believe you're going to hit this ball.
Yeah.
My dad believed we were going to be successful in the machinery business because he knew enough to know that what the product we had was good. He believed we should start manufacturing 2 ram balers, which we built the factory. He never got to see it. It was completed in October 2008 at the height of the bottom.
Yeah.
He never got to see the factory we built because in January he got diagnosed with cancer, and so he never saw it. But he believed that that's where we needed to be. We need to be building 2 ram balers. Unafraid. For me, it was like, whoa, geez, this is a big investment. Oh, my goodness. Oh.
Yeah.
How many people can you sell these to? Well, there's a lot of our customers. What are you afraid about? You know how many times my dad goes, what are you afraid about? I go, okay.
Because you're like, well, I'm looking at these numbers, and they're pretty big, and there's a lot of debt here involved, and to get this thing going, and you start running them. And so was your dad also an accountant? Was he also on the accounting side, or did you guys have, was your mother ever involved in the
Never.
business?
My mother was never involved.
Okay.
She raised 5 children. That was tough enough as it is.
That's a job in and of itself.
My dad just had an immense amount of common sense. He always used to say his left pocket was accounts receivable, his right pocket was accounts payable, and his back pocket was net cash.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if one started outweighing the other, he needed to balance it.
He knew. He just knew. He understood inventory, receivables, and payables. He understood that.
Which, I mean, going back to, school and whatever else, you can, all the geometry and trigonometry in the world, but I think what the world lacks to a certain extent is basic math, especially when it comes to business. Payables, receivables, and net cash, that's all pluses and minuses. That's not, we're not solving,
no,
riddles.
We're not building skyscrapers.
No.
And having to know workloads on the beam at floor 88.
Yeah. It's what do you have coming in, what do you have going out, and what's it going to take to get to the next step?
My dad just had that amazing ability to know that. Just like some of the old timers, man, the old timers in this industry. And like you say, you talk about family. Brett, how many of the old timers barely finished high school?
Yeah.
And ran some pretty doggone successful businesses.
Oh yeah. I mean, my grandpa had a 5th grade education, and was able to build a business, and then my dad came along with a high school education and built a bigger business, and you think about that, and this big push to go to college and whatever else, to each its own. I mean, that's if that's what you want to do, that's on you, but it's not necessary. But it does take a lot of hustle. It does take a lot of grit, which is kind of what I've always said about the scrap industry is it takes a lot of hustle. It takes a lot of grit. It's not easy. It's like that. I put a post out the other day. If it was easy, everybody would do it.
Right, I saw that.
But it's not easy. I mean, to torch, cut iron, to go take a $500,000 loan out on a piece of equipment, hope you can buy enough scrap to feed it. I mean, stuff like that. I mean, it takes a fairly big, sometimes big cojones to actually step up and say, all right, I believe in myself to build a business big enough to do it.
Well, that was my dad. He, like I say, he believed. He never doubted.
Do you think the business partner, the ex-business partner, ever looked back and was
regretted it? No, he was tired iron.
Okay.
He was old. Not old in age. Mind you, my dad we started the equipment company when my dad was 65 years old. Okay, most people at 65 pulling the parachute cord, right?
Yeah. So
his partner was a year older. He was 66. He wasn't in the best of health, and it was just, it's time to, it's a fascinating question because a few months before his old partner died, he called me. I stayed in contact with him. He would call me. It was one Christmas Eve he called me, and we were talking, and he told me something that I'll never forget. He told me he was proud of me. Mm-hmm. He told me I knew that equipment was good. He goes, but I was old and tired. I couldn't do it. But he was. We were talking about the good times because my dad and him actually lived next door to each other. And we were talking about how we played softball in the street, and we were talking about all these good times, how we played golf together. And he says, I guess he goes, you always remember the good times, John. He said, and he says, I guess it's some form of self-preservation. He didn't regret it. He needed to get out.
Yeah.
His health his health failed. He passed away in it was either 89 or 90. So it wasn't but a few years after he sold out that he passed away from cancer. And no, he didn't regret it. But when he told me he was proud of me, that was
That's cool. Yeah.
he was a good man.
Yeah.
He was a mensch. Okay, he was a good dude. He was a good man. He just was a good man. My dad's old partner. No wonder they had, mind you, they were business partners for 42 years. And you don't stay partners for somebody that long,
No.
whether it's family members or somebody, unless there's something there.
Yeah.
And
You have a lot of trust and just a lot of faith in each other that each person's pulling their weight and that there's a reason why you're both still, you're both still going.
Right.
And I mean, if you're partnered with somebody for 40-something years, I mean, we were partners with Schnitzer for 20 years. And you look back and you're like, there's some good times, there's some bad times, but you always figured out a way to work it
20
out.
years, it
Yeah,
doesn't
20
seem like
years
that.
is a long
That just
time.
doesn't seem. I remember when all that happened. That
Yeah.
just for you to say 20 years, it doesn't seem like
Just
that.
shy. I was 97 when we when we bought when Schnitzer bought 50% of United Metals at the time. That was when Terry Glukoff and Jim Goodrich were with Schnitzer, and we were part of the deal was we bought a Sierra Shear, a 700, the stationary that we looked at today. They gave us enough money to buy the Sierra Shear. They gave us some cash flow to buy scrap to feed it, and that was their purchase of 50% of the business, which is what retired my grandfather. So that was our first experience with Sierra Shear via Terry Glukoff.
And Terry Glukoff was the guy who first saw the baler and says, I know somebody who could buy it. It was his brother.
Yeah.
It's
So
just
he
crazy
was working-
how this whole comes full circle.
I know. And then here you and I are sitting here talking about it. And I think that's what's cool about the scrap industry is it's not so big that we can't have that conversation. Like, oh, this is how this worked. This guy. It's not. The industry is, I mean, it's a lot bigger than most people know.
Oh, it's a huge industry.
Yeah, but it's still small enough because it's so many family-owned operations and businesses that are all fairly intertwined.
The recycling industry as a whole, metal, paper, and all the other, it's a $70 billion a year industry in the United States.
Yeah.
It's big.
That's big.
The number one export item in California by weight is recyclables. Now, ag products are the number one dollar value.
Yeah.
Weight, number one is recyclables.
Yeah. And there for a long time it was recyclables and then it was even trash.
Yeah.
I mean, it was kind of both. And then obviously that's kind of slowed down. We figured out a way to process more of that what used to be just trash, and now we've found a way to turn it into a recyclable, which is definitely what kind of increases that volume.
Yeah, our industry is from the metals to all the different items that recycling has gone to. I mean, you and I are metal guys, okay, for the most part. That's kind of
how we cut our teeth. I mean, you cut your teeth, and I'm still that's my jam.
The first piece of equipment I ever operated was a broom. My dad made me sweep. That was it.
Yeah. Yeah, what was it? There's a time for leaning, there's a time for cleaning.
Yeah.
That was the old saying. So when last time you were here, you asked me the question, and so I think it's only fair that I return the favor. So you asked me about my boys,
right?
You said, hey, what about your boys? You're third generation. What do you think? And I think, my answer was at the time, and I think still is I'm just gonna kind of let them do what they think is best. I'm not going to push them one way or the other. I'm going to show them what this industry has to offer. And if that works for them, great. If it doesn't, then I want them to go live their life. You have 2 kids.
I have a daughter, 21, and a son, 17.
So my question to you is, you have a family-owned business. You've got a brother involved who has a son that basically works for you and on the equipment side.
Correct.
And how do you see that going for you guys in your family business?
This for me, I had kids late. My son is going to be 18 here in July. I am 58, so I'm 40 years older than him. My dad was 40 years older than me.
Okay.
He's a really good golfer. And I want him to follow his dream of trying to play pro golf. It's a dream. But there's something there. He has something that makes me believe as a father he can do it. I don't know why. Maybe they say, oh, you live vicariously through your son. But there's something there. Mm-hmm. My daughter, and so I want him to follow that dream first. My daughter's 21. She's going to be a senior at USC. And she's a big city girl, okay? And she's one of her girlfriends told me last summer when she interned with me, she says, Giovanna's hardcore. And I didn't really know what it meant.
You're like, so is that good or bad?
But she's tough.
Yeah,
she's
that's good.
Tough lady. So she has an internship.
Okay, that's a compliment. Yeah,
yeah, no,
sure.
it really is. She has an internship this summer with Boeing, but she likes the big city, and I want her to follow her dreams. My dream is for my kids to follow their dreams.
Yeah.
Of course, every parent wants their kid to be what? Happy, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm not going anywhere. Little Phil is, my nephew he's such a great kid.
He's a good dude.
He's
really how I mean, kind of, other than LinkedIn, started interacting with you. But I really spent the most of my time interacting with Phil.
Yeah,
I enjoy the shit out of hanging out with him.
Yeah, Little Phil's he's a great kid, and so he and my son and my daughter really, they're like brother and sister. They really, as cousins, first cousins, they love each other. So it's too early. Yeah. It's too early. My daughter, I know, has no interest in the business as it is now. If she came to me and said, well, absolutely, come on in. She worked with me in the marketing department last year. She's the one who started the podcast. She was behind the scenes and figured out how to get the logo done with Lindsay and Bridget. They got how to do everything to get everything ready so I could actually have a podcast, because you just don't put out a podcast.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Not to get on Spotify and Apple, you have to iTunes. You have to. There's some things you got to do. Giovanna really did that. So my son, we'll see. Now, he's worked down there at Sierra in the summer, and he works in the parts department. He works real hard. Yeah. But, we'll see what happens. I don't put them expectations that you're coming in here.
Yeah, and I'm the same way. So you and I see eye to eye. Obviously my kids are a little bit younger, but I have zero expectations other than for them to be happy. But I also don't want to clear so many obstacles for them that they don't know how to clear the obstacles themselves.
And there's they got to learn to do things themselves.
Yeah, there's a sweet spot in there of I want them to be able to clear some of their own obstacles.
Giovanna is a high jumper. When you want to talk about clearing hurdles, that girl can. She's worked an internship in Berlin last summer. She's worked in the summer before internship in D.C. She was a semester abroad and had to come home because of COVID-19, which really was a disaster for her. I really feel bad. She's hugely competent in traveling, so I think she's going to end up in a big corporation doing big things. I really do. Yeah. Or she might start her own thing, but I see Gio really working in a big corporation, traveling the world and being big.
Yeah. And you never know. I always say, people change. You could get to 25, 8, 20, or 29, 30 years old, whatever that age is, and be like, I want to go back home. I want to run that gig.
It happens.
And it could be, and you might, and it might catch you out of the blue. Or it might be like, I'm good, Dad. You look like you're having fun. Keep grinding. Keep doing what you're doing. I'm not coming back to rescue you.
Bakersfield isn't exactly the greatest place, the most exciting place, if you will.
Especially if you like the city.
Yeah, and Gio loves big city. Yeah. And
your son is still, he's definitely too young now.
John Carlo is a very laid back dude. He and Little Phil are a lot alike with their personalities. Yeah. Giancarlo, everybody loves Giancarlo. He's just one of those guys people like, because he's very laid back, very intense when he competes. Yeah. But he's a very laid back kid, and he's got a great brain. He's a negotiator. I mean, he teaches me things about negotiation. Kid knows how to negotiate already.
Yeah.
How do you get that? Because I'm the worst.
Yeah, but little Phil made his way into the industry.
Yeah. Well, little Phil, like I said, little Phil and Giancarlo have a lot in common.
So,
I mean, they're a lot alike.
And they're how old? Because Phil is
Little
late
Phil
20s?
turned on June 2nd. Little Phil turned 32 years old.
Oh, okay.
And
So
like
there's a
Giancarlo's
little
going to be 18. Yeah, there's this big gap.
Yeah.
But they love each other and they get along with each other and they went fishing together.
Like an older brother, younger brother.
I don't see
type,
it.
Or they are
No,
like
they're too far. The age is too far apart. Little Phil loves Giancarlo and Giancarlo kind of worships him. And there's this relationship where little Phil does nurture Giancarlo. And so it's a really solid relationship.
That's good.
It's a really good one. I'm telling you straight. So, hey, we'll see what happens, Brett. It's a fair question. I just don't know.
And it's early. And
It is early.
And if you had the crystal ball, then we wouldn't be selling scrap every day for them.
Well, if we had a crystal ball, I don't think we'd be even sitting here today.
Exactly. So, the last thing is for me is, from the scrap industry is hugely important to me, and obviously it's hugely important to you. It's so important to you that you're involved in ISRI and obviously your own deal with Sierra and scrap business as well, not just equipment. But if you had to give anybody, some piece of advice, it might be just what does the scrap industry mean to you, and what has it taught you, and like if there was one big takeaway from the industry as a whole, like what really resonates with you?
It takes toughness. Okay, that's one of the things. But my dad, I'm going to go back to something that the scrap industry has. My dad told me, and I would tell anybody, it's about your word. Without your word of honor, you got nothing. He said, boys, he told me when we sat down, we got involved, he goes, you can screw the scrap guy one time, but that's all you're getting. And you're done. And my advice to anybody who enters this business, just do what you say you're going to do. And you can be very successful by being straight, being honest. If you're going to tell somebody you're going to buy their material and pay them, you buy their material and you pay them. So my advice is, in this industry, your word is your bond, and without it, you cannot succeed in this industry. Cannot.
And that's great advice in the fact that it's still pretty old school. You still deal with a lot of old school people that there's a lot of handshake deals, and I've heard you discuss them on podcasts, and there's very many handshake deals that are still being done, but on the scrap business,
Trading scrap, there's a lot of handshake deals.
There's a ton of handshake deals that get done because people say, if I told you I'm going to do it, even if I had to sell my house to get it done, I already told you I was going to do it, and I committed to doing it, and I'm going to do it.
It's a great industry. Look, we are suppliers we're an essential business supplying raw materials to critical manufacturing.
Yep.
Steel industry, packaging industry, medical supplies. Without copper, without aluminum, steel, paper, how do you package? Take a ventilator. Okay, COVID-19. Okay.
Yep.
Well, there's electronics in that. Well, you need copper, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you got to package that when you finish building it, right?
Yeah.
There's plastic in it, right? And there's steel probably on a steel roller. And
Aluminum.
Aluminum.
Ton of aluminum in those ventilators.
So think about it.
Yeah.
Without our industry, that stuff doesn't get made. So our industry makes automobiles. You can't make anything without recyclables. Okay, forget it. Now there's some virgin materials, sure, but for the most part, you can't make any. This aluminum can. What's it going to be made out of? Aluminum.
Yep.
So as far as an industry goes and the longevity of an industry, as long as they're making cars out of steel, aluminum, and as long as lights still use, electricity still using copper, as long as computers still have copper and aluminum and all the different metals in them and plastics in them, our industry is going to be there.
Yep. And it'll be more important than ever as the years go by.
Well, we can't put it in the ground, can we?
No.
That's not a solution. Besides, we're a commodity business. We're not a waste business.
And
we're a commodity business. So our industry is going to last. So if you can get into this industry and you have a word of honor and you work hard, you can succeed.
I agree. 100%. We'll end on that one.
Right on.
Yeah.
Brett,
Thank you, sir.
this is so awesome to be on this side of the microphone and not asking all the questions.
Yeah. We didn't even have the script. We just went for it.
Right on.
Yeah.
That's
All right.
awesome. Thank you, man.
Thank you for coming out.
This
Thanks
is
for
awesome.
making the effort, man.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. And you got to drink a beer from a company that's got a facility in California and in Idaho. And
Terry Glukoff's son, Steve, has a scrapyard in Vista, California.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he used to be in Portland, Tacoma yard.
Yeah.
Tacoma Cowback.
And grew up in Fresno, so yeah, all over the place.
Small world, man.
Yeah, right on, Brett.
Thanks,
Thanks,
sir.
man.
Appreciate it.